Hey guys, and welcome to Talk to Aitan, episode 21. And today we got Vinny Dangerfield. How you doing, Vinny? How's everything
I'm
going?
great, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we managed to get there at the end. I know we're sort of toing and going, trying to find that right time, but finally
Yeah,
we got there. Yeah.
yeah,
So firstly, Vinny, where are you based? Where are you
yeah.
speaking
So
from?
I guess that would be the dilemma in trying to find a time frame that worked best for us. I'm over in Columbus, Ohio, Eastern Standard Time. I've been over here in the United States, forever, but I've traveled here and there over into Europe into the UK for obstacle course racing.
Oh,
So that
interesting.
yeah, that's
Okay.
one of my fun sports. It's one of the fun things that keeps me on my toes, pun intended, because there's a lot of running involved too.
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, man, but it's been great over here in the States. The weather's finally changing. It was really hot for a while, as I'm sure you are aware of too.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much hot in the whole of the Western world, I guess. Like
Right.
most of Western Europe, most of America, Canada, it's like all boiling hot for like most of the summer. So yeah,
Right.
I think we all experienced that. Yeah, tell me more about these obstacle courses. Where's like the base? Is that like a
Yeah.
headquarters of the world? Like how's
Yeah.
that work?
I guess technically it started back in the 80s, like mid 80s, late 80s, actually over in Europe, in the UK. And then it kind of grew in popularity because of Tough Mudder. If
Oh yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with
yeah,
Tough
yeah.
Mudder. Yep. And then actually they recently just got bought out by Spartan Race,
Ah,
by Joe. And so I would say that those are like the two leading brands, at least in the United States and probably internationally, you could say. But Obstacle Course Racing World Championships is kind of like a third party that takes a ton of qualifying events for local races, but then also some of those bigger national brands. And they actually are hosting this weekend the World Championships in
oh,
Stratton, Vermont. Um, Unfortunately, I won't be participating. I had to withdraw this year. I gave myself a case of rhabdomyolysis.
what
Are you
what is that?
familiar with
No,
that?
I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah, yeah.
So this is kind of like why Aphro-D is just so important to me. So back in June, well, yeah, Memorial Day here
Yeah,
in the States. So
yeah.
May 28th, it would have been. Um, I was doing something called the Murph CrossFit workout.
Okay.
So you
Yeah, yeah.
do, a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 air squats, and then another mile run.
Yeah.
And my goal was to beat an hour, which is, a pretty challenging feat. My first mile that I ran was 6:06, so I was
Yeah.
doing pretty well. I
Pretty
was going
good.
fast.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And then I knocked out, my 100 pull-ups pretty quickly. 10 minutes. I didn't do any kipping. I'm sure you maybe have heard of like
Yeah, yeah,
kipping
yeah,
pull-ups.
yeah.
I don't do kipping pull-ups. I like doing strict pull-ups. And then, dude, I just felt off going into my push-ups. I have a minor wrist impingement, so I like to do them on dumbbells, and so you actually end up getting deeper range of motion. And by like 150, I felt something off, but like my mindset is just so dialed in to like just keep going, one more rep, and just suffer through. And I knocked those out pretty in a long time. It took like 30 minutes to knock those out. And I just felt, again, like I said, off. I was just dehydrated. I could tell that I didn't have enough energy. And then, did the 300 air squats in like 10 minutes again. And then it took me 9 minutes to run the final mile. But by Thursday, so that was on Monday, by Thursday, I still couldn't touch my nose. My hands were so stiff. My arms were so swollen that I couldn't even touch my nose. Um, and one of the signs and symptoms to really know that, of course, through muscle stiffness. But another sign and symptom of it is discolored urine, actually.
Ah,
So like my urine was brown, and I was like, this is not good. You know,
interesting.
I studied this enough in undergrad. I went to uni for exercise science, and I remember, seeing this as one of the side effects to over exercising. So I was in
Ah,
the hospital for 5 days.
wow.
Um,
Okay.
and it just took a while for me to heal and recover. And so I'm finally back on my feet. And so, long story short, I had to withdraw from the obstacle course racing world championships this year, but next year is going to be a completely different experience. That's the goal, of course. But truth be told, I actually had stepped away from taking Aphro-D, and I was able to maintain, a lot of my health benefits, I would say. But after that incident, after that accident and everything, sorry, you still got me there?
Yeah, I still got you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
After that incident, I realized that I definitely needed to like step my game back up, so that's when I resubscribed back to my my servings with Aphro-D then.
So with the obstacle courses, is there money involved in it? I mean, is this just a hobby, or is there like actually?
Yes, yeah, a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
So
a bit like CrossFit. A bit like CrossFit, like you can win. There is a lot of money involved if you get to top level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely do it semi-professionally. I've had sponsorships here and there, and I've had really an opportunity to coach. I do a lot more fitness and mindset coaching for a lot of the athletes.
Oh, okay.
So in a way, it's kind of like a sponsored sport for me. You know what I mean? By going out and racing and performing, more general population folks or people who might not be as athletically fit end up realizing like, oh, hey, I want to work with Vinny. Just because, I want to perform better, not only out on the course, but also in my life. I think obstacle course racing is a perfect reflection to how we live our lives. There's always going to be a challenge, obstacle, barrier, situation, or circumstance in front of us. And so if we can teach ourselves not only physically, but also mentally how to overcome that, it just leads to that many more breakthroughs in our life.
I mean, I don't know much about obstacle course, but is it kind of like a hybrid of like CrossFit and decathlon and triathlon and Ironman? Is it like a mixture of all that? I mean, I don't think you're lifting any weights, right? In obstacle course, there's no weightlifting.
I mean, yeah. So there's carries. There's carries, like heavy farmers carries.
Oh, there is, yeah. Okay.
You've got maybe like a what we call a rec bag that you just sling over your shoulder. It's 60 pounds that you're carrying up the side of a mountain. Yeah,
it's heavy. Yeah.
Or you got like 50-pound sandbags on each arm, sort of thing. But it's not in the sense of CrossFit where you're doing reps. Of course, I would love to have that. I think there's an opportunity to blend everything into it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
There is actually some rumors that obstacle course racing is getting slowly integrated into the Olympics. So
interesting.
they're going to be taking out one of the equestrian events for, I think it's like the heptathlon or the decathlon, one of those two. I don't think horseback riding is in the decathlon, but so I think it's the heptathlon. But they're going to introduce obstacle course racing.
Oh, I see.
So it is growing. But I would say that the best way to describe it, if you've ever seen like American Ninja Warrior. Yeah. So it's basically like American Ninja Warrior with a bunch of running in between.
Yeah. I mean, and the interesting thing is like with CrossFit, it is essentially body weight kind of advantage. It's
for sure.
It's not like Olympic lifting where it's very like body weight, much more specific, it's much more equal. Whereas with obstacle course, I guess it's just like whoever wins, right? It doesn't matter on your body shape, size.
Right.
You just,
so yeah, I think if there were to be an opportunity where it grows exponentially into the future and there's just so many more people, involved, I think there could be an opportunity to do like weight categories, weight-based categories, but nothing close right now. We want as many people to come into the sport. We don't want to start pushing people away just for weight classifications.
Oh, is Tough Mudder, is that British or is that American? Who started that?
Yeah, so Will Dean originally came up with it, and he is from England, if I'm not mistaken. And he had actually made, the first rough drafts in undergrad. He had gone to school for business, I think, and he had made a rough draft, of this business proposal for Tough Mudder, and his one of his professors called him crazy.
I mean, it is absolutely massive here. Like especially like with girls, women, they love it. not like
Oh, sure.
from what I see, like, I mean, yeah, I just see people like just muddy all the time. You know, yeah, that's what people love about it. It's like getting dirty and rolling around, and you know, on a Sunday,
well,
on a
and that's
Sunday afternoon or whatever they do it on. I think it's usually on a Sunday. I think, yeah. But,
some day on the weekend. There is definitely a commodity aspect to it, but you know, some of the people who just fall in love with it, you know, really truly make it a lifetime sport.
But I never asked you, what is it you just to tell the viewers? I've never actually spoken to Vinny, so I have no idea what he does or anything. What is it you do?
Yeah.
What's your occupation?
So kind of going back to that, man, in regards to the obstacle course racing, you know, I coach people really to live their life with abundant health and leadership. And so the abundant health, you know, you can use that in really any domain of your life. You can not only, of course, be healthy in your extracurriculars and the activities that you do. You know, again, I have a lot of clients and athletes who do obstacle course racing. So you've got to be healthy. You know, you have to have a certain level of performance there, but also healthy in your relationships, healthy in your finances, healthy in your career. I think more often than not, people only associate being healthy in fitness. You know what I mean? But there are definitely ways to measure, and we really, if we look at it, every single thing that we're doing or not doing influences our health. You know, and so we can't pour from an empty cup. I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my mission is to really truly inspire people to live in that more than enough sort of experience for themselves and their health. You know, a lot of people think of, okay, well, I can just do enough to get by. But like, for example, for me, you know, not only did I have rhabdo this year, but last year I herniated my back, my C6, C7.
You've been in the walls recently,
yeah. You know, and that was during a coaching experience. You know, I was demonstrating a sprinting technique with a client, and I just turned to look at him, and I herniated my disc right there. And you know, I tell folks, you know, it's okay, like, that you're doing enough to get by, like, that's fine. And though I can't decrease the likelihood of injury for you, or I should say I can't prevent it, right? I can only decrease the likelihood of injury, and or I can only increase your ability to recover from it, right? So that's where that abundant health comes in, is that we want to be operating from a place of more than enough rather than not enough. And the leadership aspect that I coach into is really around leading yourself. You know, we are with ourselves 24/7, right? Like, any partner, any friend, any colleague, we're not nearly with them as much as we are with ourselves. And we can't lead other people. We can't lead our own partner, or we can't even lead our own family without leading ourselves. And so that's really where the abundant leadership comes from, as well, is that we've got to be louder than the voice inside our head that wants to tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to be louder than that voice inside our head.
So, I mean, are you, again, I know I'm using these kind of hybrids, but are you sort of like a cross between like a life coach and a health coach? Because I know you said you did exercise science. So
yes,
you mix.
Fitness and mindset. Fitness and mindset is the best way to describe it. Yep.
Interesting. And so, yeah, I mean, everyone's interested to hear about, like, how did the Aphro-D fit into, you said, like, you've gone off it, you've gone on it. Tell us more about, like, your experiences, how you got involved in it. Where did you start?
Well, I know Dr. Farhan personally. He's a good friend of mine. We met 5 years ago now, almost going on 6 at the time of this interview. Through an emotional intelligence training, which is incredible, right? With his neuroscience background, you know, he was just hungry for more, and so was I. And we just stayed good friends. And you know, leading right into the pandemic, like right when everything started shutting down, he came to me and said, "Hey man, I'm doing this thing, and I would love for you to try it." And I loved it. You know, during the pandemic, resources were limited for people, you know, so I didn't have access to all of the traditional gym equipment that I would have had. And, you know, perfectly enough, I was able to maintain a lot of my mass and just conditioning during the pandemic, I would truly attest to, again, the supplementation with Aphro-D.
How did you measure that?
What's that?
How did you measure like keeping your muscle mass? How did you know you're keeping it? And
I mean, if anybody is familiar with a body composition or a BIA, or a bioelectrical impedance analysis, and so basically it measures from one electrode to the next the rate of that electrical impulse through your muscles, right? So I know, because I wasn't training, I was used to training, 4 or 5 days a week. And, I definitely could have probably built on, but that was a tough time for me mentally, for sure, as I'm sure a lot of other people. So I was just doing enough to like kind of maintain. And I just, again, from my exercise science background, knew, okay, if I can just do enough, not only physically, but supplement wise, if I can just maintain my testosterone levels, I would be able to get out of the pandemic with, the same amount of strength that I had gone into it with.
So I know you mentioned, sorry, I forgot the condition that you had. Was it last year?
The rhabdo was this year, and then I herniated my disc last year. Yeah,
because you mentioned I think you said you wish you're on Aphro-D. I don't know what you said. You said something like, had you been on Aphro-D? What makes you say that? Like, what makes you think, had you been on Aphro-D?
Just from my previous experiences, and I just had my testosterone tested again. And I know it has come down. I was in probably like 700s before, if I'm not mistaken. And now I'm in like 620. Not terrible, but I would like to be back into the 700s. So, I'm going to get my blood work done again, probably in the next 3-6 months. In theory that it should be back up. But I also, recognize at the end of the day, it's meant to be also a catalyst to other healthy behaviors, right? Like you can't beat a bad diet, and I know also too, I've had a lot of personal stressors in my life. And I think that's the other cool thing about not only the supplement, but without the supplement, it wouldn't have inspired the community. And I think the community to Aphro-D is super beneficial. Of course, when we think of being very strong men, we just think of physical. But then also, I think what often we neglect is our emotions as men. And so there is definitely a distinction between being strong emotionally and then also being negligent emotionally, right? Ignorance is not always bliss. And sometimes we can't ignore things just to pretend like everything is okay. And so I know personally that I have had a lot of stressors going on in my life, again, as everybody has. And, cortisol definitely influences testosterone production and fatty acid oxidation, like the ability to burn fat. And now that I've gotten those stressors in my life managed a little bit more around like family and just personal, professional goals, I know my health is just getting back. My digestion is that much more regular.
Oh, great.
I have that much more focus throughout the day. And just even my mood, I just feel lighter as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, interesting enough, with stress, I mean, and it is a necessity for neuroplasticity to occur. Like, in terms of learning and things like that, you actually need to have the stress. I mean, people, don't be scared of the stress.
Oh,
in some way, yeah. I mean, not you, just everyone's like it can be used in a good way. We need the stress to learn, and you need to stress your body to get stronger. So, but yeah, it's interesting. But so now are you back training like 4 or 5 days a week? Are you back in full flow, or are you still recovering? What's happening?
Yeah. So I've been not running still as much as I would like to. I don't have necessarily a race on the schedule where I'm fighting for time. I had just gotten in. I'm more of a trail runner, right? With obstacle course racing and everything. So I had actually just done my first half marathon last year. And this year I ran again and finished with a 6:52 pace, 6 minute and 52 pace for a half marathon. So I forget what that would translate into kilometers, but a pretty solid time. You know, and I was running about 5 days a week, lifting 3 times a week. But again, I want to put back on more mass. So I'm back up to 4 days of lifting, plus one day of obstacle course racing. I'm not there yet still.
Yeah.
But of rock climbing. I really like rock climbing. That's a fun passion of mine. So I've gotten that back into my routine. And then I do one long run with a buddy of mine. So I'll be pacing him in October, mid-October-ish, for another half marathon. So I won't be chasing my time. We're just going to be chasing an 8-minute pace. So a little bit slower than what I might be used to. But it's definitely going to be challenging still for me. So that's how I've been kind of managing my new routine again.
You know, I've not actually asked this specific question to like a sort of endurance athlete. I mean, I guess you are an endurance athlete. I don't know if you agree. Yeah, but how would you say Aphro-D benefits like an endurance athlete like yourself, or anyone? Like, what kind of like finer details? I mean, because we know it helps. It helps men like put on lean muscle. You know, improve their power, their recovery. But like, what other aspects do you feel like it's helped you with in terms of your like endurance?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. I would say, just breaking it down, understanding what, as an endurance athlete, really, like, you could think of most endurance athletes are going for distances or bouts of exercise more than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll just say that, you know, not all of them are central nervous system loading, meaning like if you take into consideration somebody who's on like the crew team or the rowing, right? They're not actually loading their spine. They're not taking force directly through the spine. They're just using their peripheries to move. And it could be debatable, but this is just my philosophy to it. Same thing with skiing. Yes, of course you have, you know, force, again, whether that's through downward trajectory, you know, from maybe like slalom skiing or going really fast. But most of the time, if you think of like cross country skiing, you know, that would be that longer duration. Really the only endurance sport that I would say, you know, take out basketball, take out soccer, maybe. But in still their respect, they're running, they're on their feet, right? And that is putting so much load onto the central nervous system. Anytime you run, you're generating anywhere from 2 to 4 times the amount of weight and force, right? So like for me, I weigh 165 pounds. Simple math, that could be upwards of like 600 pounds plus per leg of force, right? So for endurance athletes, you know, there's even been studies that show that endurance athletes even need to be consuming more protein than even bodybuilders. Right? We typically think of like bodybuilders to be needing the most, but there were several studies done that proved that endurance athletes need 2 times the amount of lean tissue. You know, so like I need almost 300 grams of protein, and you would think of like somebody who's a bodybuilder, 180 pounds, you know, 200 pounds is consuming 300 grams of protein, right? I'm like fraction of them, you know, I'm about 30-40% lighter than them, and I need just as much protein, if not maybe even more, right? So with that being said, we know that testosterone aids in protein synthesis, right?
Yes.
And aids in cell integrity. And so again, when you're creating so much downward force through the central nervous system into the peripheries, right? When you're running and you were to record somebody in slow motion, even their face is shaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, testosterone is super, super important for endurance athletes.
Okay, that's very interesting and insightful. I mean, so thank you for telling us about that. But also, so in terms of outside of your kind of endurance work life, what do you do? Do you have like any like interesting kind of hobbies you do, or something unusual, you know, that you like doing in your free time?
So I mean, I'm always an a student of my art or craft, you know, so I love reading. I love all of the books behind you. That's amazing to see.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I do enjoy reading, definitely more audiobooks for sure, just because I can increase the playback speed. I don't know if anybody else does that, but maybe even when you're listening to this interview, you might increase the playback speed faster.
Probably, yeah.
Like sometimes the rate at which I'm thinking, it makes it so much easier to just have it go faster. But I love audiobooks, love learning. I'm actually getting married here very, very soon, 2 months now.
Congratulations.
And yes, thank you. Thank you. And we'll be getting married in Disney. So we're big Disney fans. Yeah.
Which one? Because there's a few. I've actually been to Disney World like in 92 or 93, like many years ago. Yeah. But which one? That was in Florida. And there's one in California, I think, as well, isn't there?
Yeah. So it originally started out in California with Disneyland, and then it grew to Disney World. So we'll be getting married in Disney World.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then it's all over the world now. They have Disneyland Paris and Tokyo and China and Hong Kong. They have
Paris,
Disney Hong Kong.
Paris. I think there's one in Malaysia. I think is one in Malaysia. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
All I know is that my fiance and I would love to go to every one of them. I think there's like 6 or 7 parks now internationally. But yeah, so we're big Disney fans. So
okay.
I'm a big Marvel fan.
Oh, great.
I love all the comics and everything. So in my downtime, if I'm not coaching clients or something like that, I'll watch like comic book video breakdowns, so again, like I don't have time to like read all the comics, so I'll just watch like the breakdown videos of either new stories that came out or like the Easter eggs that you may have missed in a new episode of a Disney movie or mini series or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you've got Disney. You probably have Disney Plus, right?
Oh yeah. Big Disney Plus fan.
Yeah. And there's finally, what would be your message to the the Aphro-D Nation men and other men watching this? Like, what would be your message? Like, just because I mean, there's many guys with different kind of goals. But what would be your general message to like a man like trying to regain his fitness, regain his manhood, wants to become an athlete, that kind of thing? Like, what would you say to that person?
I'll phrase it from one of my favorite quotes by T.S. Eliot. And it's kind of paraphrased just so I can remember it easier.
Sure.
But you don't know how far you can go until you've gone so far. And that quote is just always so meaningful for me. And don't get me wrong, it got me in trouble, right? Like I did more reps than maybe my body could have. But now I know I learned something from that experience, right? So we can always do one more rep. We can always have one more conversation with somebody that we might be avoiding. We can always find time to exercise. Sometimes we overcomplicate things and we're like, oh man, I need 30 minutes and it has to be like this perfect experience. But even 10 minutes is going to be more valuable. Same thing with even nutrition, right? Like everybody thinks that they have to have this perfect diet. And if you're new to eating healthy, just consider what could be one extra meal, or what could you make one substitute in that one meal to make it just quote unquote a little bit healthier. That's what I take away from that quote of, we don't know how far we can go until we've gone so far. And it just starts with one rep, one step at a time, one decision. It really just comes down to one decision. That's all it is. We're either one choice away from getting closer to our vision or further away. That's it. And we're constantly in this limbo experience. And so it doesn't need to be complicated. I feel like sometimes we overcomplicate things. And it really just takes one step.
It's interesting because I ask this to every guy I speak to, and the answer is always different, and it's always fascinating how you can ask the same question and there's like countless different ways of understanding, because everyone everyone comprehends things in a different way, like, and it's
Yeah.
you know, different sounds, so it's interesting. Well, Vinny, thank you very much for the talk.
Yeah.
And you know, my challenge to you is to try and get into the 1,000 club. You know, you said you're on your 600, right? So that's the aim, right? There. So
Yeah.
you know, Aphro-D Nation, we try to aspire to get to the 1,000, you know, the 1,000 milligram testosterone level. So yeah, so that's you know, I look forward to seeing your journey and you know, seeing where you are. You know, maybe obstacle champion of the world. Who knows? You know,
there it is. I love it, man.
We're looking
I would
for
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Thank you very much.